I think Saiyuuki World 2 is the strangest of the Wonder Boy family. It's the one where it's hardest to draw parallels between it and a Wonder Boy game, and it was localized to the US as something completely different. What's Wonder Boy got to do with this Rockman-inspired action platformer? Well, the creators of Wonder Boy licensed out their games to a lot of different publishers. The games, but not the characters. So Wonder Boy became Takahashi Meijin no Bokenjima, or Adventure Island, but not Adventure Island on the PC Engine, because that's a different Wonder Boy game. And its sequel, Wonder Boy in Monsterland, was licensed to Jaleco, who turned it into Saiyuuki World. And then Jaleco, rather than using another Wonder Boy game for their sequel, just made a whole new game, and that's Saiyuuki World 2. The plot of this game is that the greedy god Mara has taken a bunch of stones that help maintain the balance of the world, and now it's up to Son Goku, the Monkey King, to get them all back. In case you couldn't tell already, Saiyuuki is the Japanese title of the novel known in English as Journey to the West. As you play, the A button jumps and the B button attacks, and you actually have quite a few things you can do with your staff. As you jump, you can hit up and down to attack above and below you, and you can crouch to put it in front of you to block attacks. All of the stages are divided up into segments that scroll either horizontally or vertically, but never both. On the first stage, you're departing Goku's mountain home and just trying to get down to the world. There's no boss on this level, it's just there for you to get used to the controls. Once you've completed it, then you're given your choice of 6 stages. You can perform these stages in any order, but the bosses at the end of the stages become stronger as you beat each stage. So there's an advantage to taking on the tougher boss first. When you beat a boss, you get a new power for your staff. These are mostly attacks, but they don't do additional damage to the correct boss, so for the most part, they don't affect what order you'll want to do things in. When you have those power-ups, you hit start to cycle through what you're using. Every enemy that you defeat drops something. The most common drop is a gourd of wine. Collect enough of these and your maximum health increases by 1. If you pause the game by hitting select, you can see how many you need to get to the next level. Naturally, enemies can also draw health power-ups. That's what the hearts do. The hands increase your attack strength, which doesn't matter against the basic enemies, but there are some enemies and mid-bosses that are a bit tougher. It goes away after you've attacked a few times. The helmet increases your defense, and you lose that one when you've taken too much damage. The jacket makes you invincible for a short period. It seems like the length of invincibility in Saiyuuki World 2 is a bit short. It feels like it lasts about 10 seconds. Tougher enemies can drop a pole extension. This makes your reach longer, and it is absolutely vital to have this when you fight bosses. The other vital item to have are the lamps. Or maybe it's medicine? I think it's supposed to be medicine, but people were calling them lamps. You only have 1 life in Saiyuuki World, but if you run out of health and you possess one of these, then it gives you some energy back. You can have up to 3 of them. Regardless of anything else, the first stage you probably want to go to is the forest. It's a very standard platforming challenge, nothing too tricky until you reach the boss at the end. The boss is this guy dressed in leaves. He'll jump around and throw bamboo at you, and when he lands on the ground explodes into a shower of leaves. He gives you the staff twirl. It's a very short-range attack, but the important thing is that it can smash certain bricks. That will make navigating stages and getting certain power-ups easier. As you're playing levels, keep an eye out for empty spots that are a bit difficult to get to or require using the staff to smash them open. There's often an invisible power-up hidden there. Continuing clockwise, the fire stage is a bit tougher. You have a strong enemy that will give you a staff extension right at the start, and then there's these fire birds that explode but don't drop anything. The only enemies in the game to do that. Something useful to note about the lava pits here is that you can't fall to your death anywhere in Saiyuuki World 2. There's always something you can land on, and it will probably damage you. The boss on the fire stage is this cloud thing. It floats around in a circle and then a burning man emerges from it to leap around the screen. Defeating this boss gives you a flame staff. It does a bit of extra damage, but it's really only effective in a few places. Next is a spot I'm just going to call the Alien Zone. This is a long descent down into the earth, And rather conveniently, enemies will shoot up the shaft at you. That means you can get in their path while pressing down to attack, and then just stay there racking up power-ups. It's a good way to level up very quickly. The boss on this stage is this demon that bounces up and down. When you hit it, it explodes outward in all of the cardinal directions, so you have to strike it and get away. A good way to beat it is to get underneath it and attack up, then move to the side during its attack, and then repeat your upward attack. He gives you Goku's Cloud, and when you hit the attack with this, it floats out. Jump on top of it, and you can fly around the screen for about 5 seconds. You can jump off it again, and then jump right back on it once more to refresh it. Except for some places in the final stage where you're supposed to use it, I actually found this one to not be so helpful. Saiyuuki World 2 tends to drop things on top of you from above, and they funnel you into paths that are generally safe. You can see the item falling and get prepared for when it comes at you. When you're on the cloud, however, you're off that path and things tend to just drop straight on you. In the hills, you have to deal with a lot of rocks being dropped on you. There's also a lot of spikes everywhere. Get to the boss at the top, and he turns into this ball that slams around the screen a lot, and eventually he changes into a guy that launches his fist at you. Fortunately, he's not invincible when he's in the ball form, so that's your best opportunity to attack him. He gives you the pole throw. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but it is helpful for enemies that stay out of reach, and it sticks into walls so it can be used as a platform. The ice stage is the next one around the circle, and it does all of the things that you would expect from an ice stage. This is also the game's water stage, and your health ticks down while you're underwater, plus you'll encounter flowing water that shoves you around. The boss of this stage is a frog that will turn into waves and flow around the room. It's only vulnerable when it turns back into a frog. For defeating this boss, you get the Ice Blast. It can freeze enemies in place, but enemies frozen in place are invulnerable, so it's not the most helpful of power-up. Usually, you want to destroy the enemies so that you can collect what they have. Finally, we have the Poisoned Forest. The most interesting thing about this stage are the leaves that will spring you high into the air. The boss is a chrysalis that will drop down, and eventually it will become a moth. Defeating this boss will get you the web attack. You can trap enemies with it and shoot them back out. Once you clear all 6 of those stages, you get a 7th power-up, the dragon. At the cost of 1 of your heart, you shoot an attack that destroys just about everything. The final stage is some exceptionally difficult platforming. Right from the start you have these clouds that you're constantly bouncing on, and that makes jumping extremely difficult to do consistently. And there's plenty of areas here where you have to use your abilities to get through. If you do wind up getting stuck, there are a lot of cheat codes in Saiyuuki World 2. If you pause the game by hitting select, and then hold up and right on controller 1, and down and left on controller 2, then select again to unpause, you'll get 3 lamps. You can also enter this code while paused, unpause, and then repeat it, and you'll skip straight to the final boss. And if you hold down A and B on controller 2 as you start the game, you'll get to a sound test. In Japan, Saiyuuki World 2 is considered to be one of the Famicom's hidden gems. A quality game that didn't get a lot of attention at the time of its release due to how close it was to the Super Famicom launch. As for myself, it's been one of my favorite obscure games on the Famicom. Yeah, the weapons aren't really that great, and the final stage is by far the worst thing in the game. But the stages are really fun to play, the platforming gives you a good challenge, and the bosses are pretty cool. It's one of Jellicoe's best games on the system. This one's a pretty good time.